The personal configuration to date, or cosmic address, is the position on the map in a given moment, which can be a phase of life or a particular circumstance. It is like a still picture of the dynamic experience of life. It is the equivalent of a picture of an inner PET scan, knowing that a video, albeit still imprecise, is more precise and contains more information. So the exact location on the map, this still picture, should be taken as a guideline that shows the path, like a map that shows you where you are and the possible paths to get to your destination. And then choose the path to walk through, keeping in mind that the path is the destination. The path is life, existence. Everything in color on the map, everything in color on the picture is life. The assessment of the personal configuration is done in a 90-minute coaching session, and it is important to stress again that the assessment is done for a person in reference to a particular moment and circumstances. The personal configuration to date shows the phase of development of the 9 aspects of experience for a phase of life, situation, or context. The wheel on the left shows the path of presence, and it shows 3 things: your capacity to observe, your essential identity, and the type of objects that you have access to. The objects can be concrete, subtle, causal, and non-phenomenal, or no object. It represents the essential intelligence and self-realization. The wheel on the right shows the development of interpretation of the 8 aspects of experience of existence, which are 8 intelligences or lines of development. As a whole, they show the evolution of self-actualization. The 8 aspects of experience are thoughts, represented as cognitive intelligence; emotions, represented as emotional intelligence; sensations or somatic intelligence; actions or behavioral intelligence; patterns or systemic intelligence; perceptions or perceptual intelligence; interconnections or perspectival intelligence; and interactions or relational intelligence. All aspects of experience are always present, whether we are aware of them or not. They are all interrelated, and they are correlated in each evolutionary phase, so that an orange thought has its emotional, orange somatic, behavioral, systemic, perceptual, perspectival, relational, and sensational correlatives, all of them orange. When there is mismatch or misalignment amongst the different aspects, we experience it as suffering. When there is alignment amongst all 9 aspects, we experience calm. That's why the conscious alignment movement is the movement from suffering to calm. On this picture, the red line represents the interpretation of experience at our lowest moments, during which I have access to fewer competencies, or competencies that are more anemic, or competencies that are less functional for the given situation. It is the line of our challenges or shadow. It may represent specific areas of life in which we tend to interpret experience from this line, or it may also represent aspects of experience that are lagging behind and manifest in all areas of life. The green line shows the most natural or native interpretation of experience, and I naturally have access to these competencies in this moment. It is the line of the center of gravity or actualized potential. The blue line shows the highest interpretation of experience that I have access to. It is the line of potential in process of being actualized, because it's not always available. This particular personal configuration shows the overlay of 3 lines with the development of the interpretation of the aspects of experience, which show mostly the equivalent of the green line or center of gravity. In this particular case, perceptions, perspectives, and relationships, as well as sensations, lag behind, which will probably show up as frustration in relationship and with regards to events in life, as well as a lesser connection with the physicality. There is, however, a greater capacity to comprehend reality, so it is necessary to actualize the relationship beliefs, competencies, and interactions, as well as the competencies and beliefs regarding the world, bringing them up to the current cognitive understanding. and the same goes for the sensations and physicality, the awareness of the body. The red line and blank spaces indicate the limitations. There can be limitations due to dysfunctional development, the red line, while the blank spaces show the potential not yet actualized. The red line shows the challenges and lagging competencies that require effort or specific training. The most relevant limitations in this example are the relationship, somatic, perspectival, and perceptual lines. The indentations of the green line show competencies of sensations, perceptions, perspectives, and relationships that are lagging slightly and can be actualized to the level of the other lines. The subjective experience of calm increases as we advance towards the perimeter of the wheel, and the rounder the line, the greater the calm experience. Each phase of life includes all aspects of experience and develops horizontal competencies that are needed for the functional interpretation of experience, and the experience is calm. If the competence is not developed, both the interpretation and the experience will be dysfunctional, and the experience will be of suffering. As long as the competency necessary for the functional interpretation of experience is not developed, the experience will be of suffering. The conscious alignment movement is the movement from one position on the map to another. It requires the development of the competencies that are lagging behind. The KALM map plots the horizontal competencies of the phases of development and the practices necessary to develop them through the KALM cycle. So, the personal configuration or cosmic address provides your location on the map, your next evolutionary step, and how to get to where you want to be. Another piece of data that the cosmic address offers is the tendency to relate to life from one of the quadrants. This manifests as a personality type. It defines 4 personality types that will refine the position on the map of aspects of experience. These are the visionary, or the tendency to think, find meaning, or look for meaning, to envision, or to be emotional. The entrepreneur, with a tendency towards physicality, action, and/or movement. The organizer, with a tendency to organize, to processes, systems, and nature, as well as everything related to the senses, including art. And finally, the collaborator, with a tendency towards relationships, culture, and sharing. These tendencies impact our way of interpreting experience as well as the way of relating to it. In other words, if I am a visionary, I have a tendency to interpret the events in my life through thoughts and/or emotions. Or thoughts and/or emotions move me towards action and relationship to life. And for example, if I am an entrepreneur, I have a tendency to interpret the events in my life from sensations of physicality, action, and/or movement. And it is the physicality or action themselves that lead me to conclusions about the event. These tendencies can also be seen as a process, since they vary through the different phases of development. So a phase with receptive tendency is followed by a phase with active tendency, which in turn is followed by a phase with reciprocal tendency, and finally, followed by a simultaneous or systemic phase. This pattern is repeated in each tier: concrete, subtle, and causal. However, the basic natural tendency or typology seems to stay throughout our lives. Alignment in regards to quadrants means developing competencies or activating them in the more anemic quadrants for experience and its development to be more functional. This picture shows an example of a person with a tendency to find meaning and towards relationships, and a lesser tendency towards action and movement. This example shows the quadrant orientation of a person with tendency towards action and organization, and shows more anemia regarding finding meaning and relationships. This other example shows the quadrant orientation of a person with a tendency towards action and relationships, very common in sales profiles, and shows more anemia regarding finding meaning and organization. This last example shows the quadrant orientation of a person with a tendency towards relationships, very closely followed by a tendency towards action and physicality, and finding meaning and emotions. In this case, the systemic quadrant of organization and processes lags behind quite a bit. This image shows greater resolution of the quadrant typology, including all aspects of experience. The wheel of areas of life shows the capacity of interpretation of experience that is active for each area. This means the personal configuration to date for that area. It is possible that the person may have access to a broader interpretation or a broader degree of complexity and/or depth, but the context may not allow for its expression or exploration. This may translate into suffering if we're not aware of it. However, being aware of the difference regarding the degree of complexity and/or depth allows us to adapt or make the decision to change context if at all possible. This is a wheel that invites to reflection regarding the degree of satisfaction of each area, as well as the time that we dedicate to them. It then becomes conscious, and the decisions we make are more complete. The KALM practice wheel identifies the practices that are foundational for functional development. It is an invitation to reflect and practice. The KALM cycle is the process that moves the KALM map. It is made of 8 stations that are really 8 developmental paths in and of themselves. When they are alternated and developed in an intertwined fashion, they catalyze each other's development. This catalytic aspect is based on the natural learning cycle and the cycle of complex adaptive systems. The development of a single path leads to KALM in a more progressive, slow, and partial manner, since it ignores the other paths and areas of the territory. The KALM cycle takes into consideration the full map of human development, as well as the areas of life, and promotes the development of horizontal evolutionary competencies of waking up, body, mind, heart, and essence, and growing up, or maturity of the capacity to manage the degree of complexity and degree of depth of thoughts, emotions, sensations, actions, systems, perceptions, interconnections, and interactions. The KALM cycle runs in 3 tiers: concrete, subtle, and causal. The competencies trained in each station evolve along the 3 tiers following the pattern challenge, potential, and mastery. Each station is active in all 4 fields of the map: individual, internal and external, and collective, internal and external, even though priority can be given to one quadrant over the others for each station. The cycle can be traversed in 1 minute, a couple of days, or even a lifetime, so that in a given moment there can be several cycles active simultaneously. Traversing the full cycle in the moment leads to the experience of KALM. The stations of the cycle are named after the competency that they develop. The image shows examples of the evolution of some of the competencies in the concrete, subtle, and causal tiers of each station. The stations are observing, interpreting, experiencing, illuminating, contemplating, exploring, celebrating, and embodying, which is the consequence of running the cycle.